Hi, everyone. Welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. 1986, what a year. In Toronto, a TTC ride was 45 cents for kids and $1 for adults. Over at Honest Ed's, you could get a pair of pantyhose for 77 cents. And the population of Ontario was about 9 million people. Now, let's see what the hot topics were for the province at that time.
Oral questions. The Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much. I should like to welcome all members back to the Assembly, those that come from the far east, those that come from the far north. It's a shame we had to spend $200,000 to get one of you back, but we're delighted to have you all here. And I should like to join the rest of the members of the House in welcoming the new clerk. I have a question for the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology. While the Minister was overseas in the Far East, trying to lure more investment to Ontario, something very distressing was happening. And that is that General Motors in Oshawa, which is in the midst of a major expansion, was not hiring all of its people from Ontario or even Canada. No, it was advertising overseas. It was advertising in the London, England Daily Mirror for tool and die makers for their GM plant in Oshawa. They were offering excellent wage and benefit packages and relocation assistance as well.
Question, please.
Is the Minister aware of this, and what is his opinion with regard to it?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, I'm not aware of the particular ad that you mentioned. I would be very pleased to have a copy of it and would be very pleased to look into it. Maybe if the previous government had have done a better job in the education field, we wouldn't be faced with this problem.
Order.
42 years.
Supplementary.
42 years.
More revisionism, boys.
Don't lose your temper.
Order.
Now my son is in England.
Supplementary.
Don't get carried away here now.
Well, I want to say to the Minister that he may indeed be right. But the Minister has also had 16 or 17 months together with his colleagues, the Futures Program, the High Technology Fund, and Lord knows all sorts of announcements.
Better now?
To start to deal with this
Better
problem.
when?
And the Minister rises today to tell us he doesn't even know about it. Now, specifically, given the fact that AMC went out of their way to offer jobs to people in Northern Ontario who are not participating in the economic recovery, will you today give an assurance to the House that you will call General Motors, tell them these ads are inappropriate, and that they must hire all of their people in Canada?
Minister.
I would be very pleased to receive a copy of that particular ad. As I mentioned, I'm not in the habit as a free enterpriser myself and telling companies what they must or must not do. But I think the Leader of the Opposition should also be aware that the company that he is running down has just spent over $2 billion of an investment in Oshawa, providing many jobs into the future of the people of this province.
Order. Final supplementary.
Well, if the minister doesn't intend to call up General Motors and tell them that they ought first to be hiring in Canada and only in Canada, then he's going to have to answer for that. And I want him to draw something to his attention. The president of General Motors of Canada is George Peebles, president of General Motors of Canada. George Peebles is one of the members appointed by the Premier of Ontario as a member of the Premier's Council to help give out money for high-tech reconstruction in Ontario. My question to the minister is a simple one.
Another red tie clone.
Will he call up Mr. Peebles, a member of the Premier's own committee, set up to bring attractions to attract jobs to Ontario, and investment to Ontario, and ask him if he would mind hiring in Ontario or resigning from the Premier's Council, which is supposed to create jobs for
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Peoples has made a great contribution to the Premier's Council and will continue to do so. And as I mentioned, if your previous government had done a better job in training people, we wouldn't have the problems that we do now.
New question.
You're going to cure Britain's unemployment, Hugh.
You deserve the golden
New
handshake.
question.
I have a question for the Premier. Premier, apparently on your return this morning, you did what we are kind of getting used to, which is running away from those issues which your advisors tell you may begin to cling on to you, and you run very quickly from them. In this regard, I'd like to raise the question of Rodney Lewis. It appears in reports over the weekend. It appears in reports over the weekend that you called him in. I'll wait till the Minister of Education's finished advising. That you called him in and had a chat with him, shall we say, about his retirement. A chat that Douglas Fisher would report, attributing this to the Minister of Education, would indicate that your intentions were to make sure that Mr. Lewis was gone tomorrow if you formed the government. Could you perhaps take a moment or two and describe to the House the meeting you had with Mr. Lewis in your office?
Premier.
Nice meeting. I'm sorry you weren't there. You would have enjoyed it. He came into my office and we discussed the House and recognized that he had served here for many, many years. And I said, hello, Mr. Lewis. And his name was, as you know, not Rodney, it's Roderick. We had a very nice chat. I said, in my opinion, it was time for changes in the House, and it was our judgment that there was a consensus of that among the members of the House, that he, having served for how many years it was, now being 75 years old, it was time for him to retire. And he took my advice in that particular matter.
Order. Order. Supplementary.
Well,
Supplementary.
I should correct the record, Mr. Speaker. If the Premier was reporting a consensus of this House that it is worth $2 million to the taxpayers of Ontario to get a new clerk, he was not speaking for the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario. May I ask the Premier, after this meeting in your office, when you said what we will find out later when Mr. Lewis appears before a committee, what actually happens, pursuant to that, did you, or the Treasurer, or the Chairman of Management Board, or Mr. Sorba, or the Minister of Colleges and Universities, any of you get a legal opinion from any source indicating what Mr. Lewis's entitlement in law was in terms of severance payments?
Premier.
First of all, you're quite right. I never purport to speak for the Progressive Conservative Party. No one has any idea what the Progressive Conservative Party thinks about anything. You don't even speak for the party, and that's one of the problems at the present time. Now, I gather your view was that he should continue on forever, for another 30 or 40 years. I'm not... But it was our view that we should make the appropriate arrangements for him to leave. And the answer is the Attorney General has given a legal opinion on this matter.
Final supplementary.
Well, if you are not clear what the Progressive Conservative Party stands for on some other issues, let me be clear about this one. We believe that taxpayers of this province would be better off having Mr. Lewis continue as Clerk of the Legislature than paying him $2 million because of your sloppy and inept handling of his retirement.
Supplementary.
My final question to the Premier is this. If the Attorney General has, in fact, as you have stated a moment ago, rendered an opinion with regard to Mr. Lewis's entitlement in terms of severance pay, would you be kind enough to table that legal opinion with us before the end of the day?
Premier.
You see, I want you to know very clearly where we stand. We don't believe in entitlement for life. You passed a law in 1974 bringing some kind of entitlement. We don't agree with that. We have a very different approach. We believe that the clerk should be a servant of the House, not of a particular party, and we have changed things very substantially and apologized not for that. Now, with respect to the legal opinion, what I would recommend that you do is ask the Attorney General what his opinion is, and he'll be very happily share it with you.
New question. Order. 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 New question. New question. The member for York South.
I'd like to ask the Premier if he can explain why the government, in this day and age, authorized the following payments to Mr. Lewis, as I understand it. A so-called attendance gratuity of $64,712, vacation pay of $49,276, benefits of $600, an annuity worth $220,000, a gratuity of $31,500 in addition to that, plus the use of a secretary, furniture, and a chauffeur. I wonder if the Premier can explain why that really quite extraordinary level of expenditure for one individual who has served the House and is now 75 years old, why that expenditure was authorized, and can he give us his personal assurance that the supplementary estimates which would authorize this expenditure will be called by the government as soon as possible so the House will have an opportunity to express its view with respect to this incredible spending of public money.
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member, I'll refer that to the Treasurer who can address specifically those questions you raised, those numbers you raised.
Mr. Speaker,
Treasurer.
The honourable member has indicated a list of expenditures which can be reviewed by any committee, including those dealing with the estimates. But I can assure the members of the House that the monies available and to be paid to the clerk under the present agreement simply maintain his salary, which was established by the previous administration and under the Legislative Assembly Act of 1974, and the orders in council associated gave him lifetime entitlement to that money. Now, I think it's too much money also, but that is what he's entitled to.
Order.
Mr. Speaker,
Supplementary.
The Treasurer did not answer my question with respect to the calling of the supplementary estimates. But I wonder if the Treasurer could perhaps tell us. Injured workers were demonstrating outside the House today with respect to their pensions and with respect to their economic conditions. Right. I wonder how the Treasurer feels about this incredible giveaway to one individual by the government of this province, speaking allegedly on behalf of the people of this province, at the same time as 2,000 of 313,000 workers in this province who were laid off have in fact received severance pay. I wonder what kind of a statement he thinks the Liberal government is making to injured workers, to workers who've been laid off, to other peoples who are forcing difficult circumstances when they give this kind of a $2 million payout to one individual. How do you think that reads with the population of the province of Ontario, and how do you think they feel about that kind of thing?
Order. Order. I must inform all our visitors in the galleries that the standing orders state that any individual in the gallery must refrain from any demonstration of any kind, otherwise they'll have to leave the gallery. Treasurer.
Mr. Speaker, the estimates of the Assembly will be called in the usual order. This is established by agreement among the House leaders, and I don't think there's ever been any question that the honourable member can point to when any representative of the government stood in the way of the calling of estimates. That comes in the usual order, and the honourable member will be free to say and do whatever he likes in that connection. As to his more rhetorical question, I wish more money were available to injured workmen, and I've already said that I feel the money payable to the clerk is, what's the right word, too large. But it is that which is required under the law passed by the legislature. Now, I would say to the honourable member, if the former clerk were prepared to vacate his office and submit his resignation for some amount of money less than that, we would have been very glad to accommodate him, but he indicated that he was not. Now, I can assure you that I wanted to fulfill the requirements of the law, and I also wanted to be sure that the office available to the new clerk that was picked by the committee of the legislature, independent of the government for the first time, was going to be freely available to him without any embarrassment, without any problems at all, and that he could take up his new duties without any impediment whatsoever.
Final supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the fact of the matter is that the government was faced with a difficult situation and they panicked. But they panicked in response to one individual who I think one can say was well established. Would it were the case that they would respond in the same way when other individuals insist on their rights as well. And in that regard, I'd like to ask the Treasurer why the government continues to refuse to provide indexing of pensions for those who are in receipt of private pensions when the Treasurer will know full well that Mr. Lewis's original pension entitlement was for $38,400, which was 42% of his 86-87 pay, which was enriched to provide a pension of $60,000 plus the $31,500 per annum. No other employees receive a pension equal to 100% of their pre-retirement income, and his colleague, the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, has refused systematically to give that assurance. How does he feel about those pensioners whose incomes have declined by 50% since Mr. Lewis reached the age of 65?
I don't like that at all, and I can be certainly frank about that. But I must point out to the honourable member that as far as we're concerned, and as far as any person might be concerned who reads the statute, the former clerk is entitled to a continuation of his job as long as he lives or as long as he can perform the job. And as far as we're concerned, we wanted to create a vacancy, and we have done so, and these matters are still under review.
New question. Order. Order. New question, the member for York South.
Well, it's the most extraordinary kind of mismanagement. No other employee in Ontario has received that kind of platinum handshake. It sends out a terrible message to the people of this province, and it's one that will stick with the Liberal government for a long time to
come. Does the member have a new question?
It's a new definition of pay equity. Mr. Speaker, my question to the Premier has to do with rent review and Bill 51. The Minister of Housing has made what I think most of us would consider to be the extraordinary statement that unless everything goes the government's way in the committee, they are going to pull the bill. I'd like to ask the Premier, is he prepared to accept the will of the legislature with respect to amendments to Bill 51, which will in fact make good on the agreement that he signed in May and June of 1985, which would in fact assure fair rent control for all the tenants in this province?
Premier.
Mr. Speaker, the answer to the honourable leader is the following. That bill was unique in the history of this province. We lived in a very polarized system where landlords were shouting at tenants and tenants shouting at landlords. There was a lot of very simple wisdom being peddled around the province. There was a polarization over the last 10 years, and there was a sense of no meeting of the minds. The minister pulled together groups from the people from the tenants movement as well as from landlords who developed a consensus that would protect tenants and at the same time, we believe, stimulate building of new supply on the market. Now, I know there are extremists on both sides that don't believe that. And I know that there are certain people that have a certain political interest in taking the extreme point on almost everything. But let me tell you that this consensus is unique. And as you know, the bill is fragile in the sense that there's a number of things being weighed off against each other. There is no perfect solution to the problem that we face, but I think most people admit that we are facing a major problem in the province in that regard. and this is seen by thoughtful, moderate observers to be a solution that protects both sides. And so what I am saying to my honorable friend is, let us not take the extreme view, let's take the reasonable view, let us not destroy the integrity of that bill, and let's not just put simple partisan gain in the short term against a program that's going to both protect tenants and supply affordable housing in the future. That's what we're trying to do.
Supplementary.
You have an obligation.
And if you can clap on that, there's something wrong with you.
I don't think I heard an answer to my question, Mr. Speaker. What the Premier seems to be saying is that a private arrangement cooked up behind liberal closed doors between representatives appointed by them and for them is going to take precedence over a consensus of this legislature. A more anti-democratic statement by the Premier I cannot imagine. I'd like to ask the Premier, can he give us his assurance that, in fact, a consensus of this House will prevail and that we will be able democratically to improve and strengthen a bill which the government itself has introduced over 100 amendments to, and whose improvement is seen by most tenants and most people who have been watching the bill as essential for their protection, the protection which the Liberal Party ran on in the last election, signed in the Accord, and is now reneging on in Bill number 51.
Mr. Speaker, we will support every move that improves the bill. Now, in your opinion of improving the bill may differ from mine, and you must, sometimes in your insularity, you take a single-minded view of these situations. And what we're looking at is we've achieved, I think, a balance in the situation. We're anxious to improve the bill in any way anybody has any ideas for. But you must respect what's happening in that bill and the principles of that bill. And as long as those principles are held intact, then obviously we'll accept the wisdom of this legislature. But we must remember what that bill is trying to achieve.
Order. Order.
So you repudiate now.
Order. Order. I'd remind all members you're just wasting your own time. You're just wasting your own time. Final supplementary, the member for York South.
Can I take it then from what the Premier has said that if this House approves an amendment which states quite clearly that there will be a 4% rental guideline for all the tenants in this province, that will in fact become the law in this province, and you will not withdraw the bill or kill the bill, as your Minister of Housing has said that he would?
What I am trying to persuade my honourable friend of is the fact that he's got to respect the integrity of that bill and stop taking such a simple-minded historical view of this situation. And let's not introduce the old polemics that have been hanging around for the last 10 years. Some very thoughtful spokesmen from the tenants movement that don't happen to be lackeys of ours, that happen to be respected spokesmen who happen to think that the principles contained in that bill are extremely worthwhile and modern. And if you want to introduce the same old rhetoric of 10 years ago into this debate, then I can tell you, my honourable friend, that he's moving it backwards, not forwards. And I'm saying, come into the 1986s, start working on a bill that's been constructed by a lot of thoughtful people, and if you can approve it, fine. But you've got to respect that we are trying to achieve a number of purposes with that bill, and most thoughtful observers think it's been well done.
New question. The member for Parry Sound.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Premier. The Premier stated earlier here this afternoon that the former clerk, Mr. Lewis's job was his for life, or was his until he could be removed when he no longer could do the job. Is the Premier leading us to believe that Mr. Lewis could no longer do the job as clerk?
Premier.
Well, I wish my honourable friend wouldn't try to drag me into personalities in this regard. And, you know, we could have brought a resolution in the House to have him removed and discuss the whole situation, but it was the view of this government and certain other members opposite, I believe, that it was time for a change in this House. You may not take that view, but I'll tell you, a number of others did, and that is why we did what we did. You see, what you can't understand, I guess, I say to my friend opposite, there's a great number of changes going on in this House. The fact that we have French translation here today would never have happened under you.
Hear, hear.
The fact that we changed up the rules.
Never.
The fact that we allow that you can stand up and say anything you want to at the beginning of this legislative period is something new for those. You don't quite understand yet the change that has overtaken this place. And we have to be in the forefront of that change, not lagging behind. So it was our view, and I don't want to discuss the personality, that it was a change that was important to the modernization of this legislature.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, the supplementary. The question here at law is to whether or not you and your government felt that the former clerk could still continue in his capacity as clerk of this legislature. You have not answered that question, and you are also telling us here today that the former clerk was entitled to this money for the rest of his life. Are you telling us that this package that your members of the Board of Internal Economy approved last week is what Mr. Lewis would have received for the rest of his life? And are you also telling us, which you still haven't answered, as to whether or not Mr. Lewis could continue on in his capacity as clerk?
I think I answered the question very clearly. He'd served the legislature for a long period of time. He served it well, but it was time for a change, and we thought we had to move on. I'm sure my honorable friend opposite has even himself got through his head that people of this province wanted change.
New question. Order. 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 You wouldn't want to make the member for Welland Thorold shout, would you? The member for Welland Thorold.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations. He'll be aware, I'm sure, that the just published Stats Canada's figures show that the casualty and property insurers of this nation had profits of $292 million net during the second quarter of this year. Given, Mr. Minister, that is 2.5 times last year's figures, and 12% higher than ever before recorded for that quarter, I wonder if the minister would now admit, first, that the insurance companies are doing exceedingly well at the expense of the public of this province, and secondly, that the time has come to halt any further increases in auto and liability insurance rates.
Minister. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the member's comments, but he should know that talking about profit in isolation means really nothing. What you have to do is talk about return on investment. I'm not trying to apologize for the insurance companies, but you should know that in automobile insurance, in the latest figures available for 1985, for every dollar of premium that was taken in on automobile insurance, $1.31 was paid out in claims.
Supplementary.
I might inform the minister I'm not talking about this in isolation, that in fact that $292 million figure is after they paid all their taxes. Given your intransigence in even considering the efficient and low-cost public auto insurance systems in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and BC, and giving the huge profits of the insurance companies, which are very real, will you now at least proclaim a new Section 371 of the Insurance Act, which gives your ministry the power to hold or adjust rates which are excessive, discriminatory, or unreasonable?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I should let you know that that particular provision has been on the books for over 50 years. Not one government has seen fit to implement it, and I can tell you this, that in Alberta, where they do have such a plan, if that plan were in effect in Ontario, the people of Ontario over the last 5 years would have paid anywhere from 8 to 39% more than they paid now if they had implemented that plan.
New question, the member for Brampton.
Mr. Speaker, in the beautiful city of Brampton, we have a large number of Portuguese residents who are excellent residents of my community. It has come to my attention that apparently Ottawa has taken certain steps to require visas for these people. I'd like to address a question to the Minister of Citizenship and Culture. I would like to inquire as to whether or not such steps were taken by the Federal Minister of State for Immigration with any consultation with this government?
Minister?
Thank you very much. On July 16th, we communicated with the Honourable Minister, making it very clear that we were distressed about the rather discriminatory acts being taken on this group of citizens and visitors. We told the Minister that we felt that indeed families were experiencing a good deal of hardship and asked for his consideration and assurance that not only would the refugee system include considerations for the Portuguese community, but that legitimate visitors from Portugal would be treated in the correct fashion. I realize that the visa system is in place and that the Minister has taken our letter into account.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to demonstrate what the official opposition thinks of the Portuguese people in my community by sending something like that over. It's a serious question for my community. Supplementary, I'd like to know what the federal minister has done in terms of dealing with the retraction or the change of these visa requirements.
Order. 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 I cannot hear a thing. Order. Well, Minister?
The federal minister appears to have done little to take into account the hardships being imposed on the Portuguese community and on the visitors. We continue to impress on him the importance of treating visitors in a very compassionate way. And my colleague, the Honourable Tony Ruprecht, met on the weekend with members from the Portuguese community to say that he was also making representation. We will continue to press the federal government to pay attention to this act of discrimination. In addition, we will also be working with the federal ministers to make sure that the fast-track system for refugees in general is implemented on time in April of '87.
New question, the member for Brantford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Mr. Premier, it appears that the concept of the disclosure of all assets and properties is a very difficult one for your ministers to grasp. Your transition lawyer, Mary Eberts, Blennis Wright, the law firm of Blake Castles, were all unable to get a number of your ministers to voluntarily disclose their assets, and these things only came to light when John Black-Eyre did his investigation. My question to you, sir, is can you explain to this House what it is? Are your ministers so inept that they did not realize they had to disclose these assets, or, heaven forbid, were any of them deliberately trying to keep these things from coming to light?
I'm glad to see my honourable friend quoting John Black-Eyre after you said such nasty things about him the day before his report came out. You're now relying him in for text, but I think you have to put this whole thing in context. As you know, one of the problems with the guidelines was the lack of certainty. Mr. Wright applied the standards that he'd applied to previous governments. Let me just give you examples. There are certain things that he wouldn't think that have to be declared. Blake Castles had a different view of what should be declared, what should not be declared, as did Mr. Aird. And so you have three different views on the very same situation. It speaks to the fundamental problems of the lack of clarity in the guidelines.
Suggest to the Premier that is simply not the case. You weakened the guidelines. Clearly they were not being enforced as rigidly as they were under the old government, and they still couldn't comply. Now, does the Premier want us to assume that it was an honest mistake that the Minister of Natural Resources failed to disclose he had fishing properties? It was an honest mistake the Minister of Transportation and Communications failed to disclose holdings in public companies, and that it was just a series of honest mistakes that his Minister of Skills Development failed to disclose interest in 28 partnerships and joint ventures. Now, will the Premier please assure the House that these were honest mistakes, and will you further assure us that none of these interests in which your ministers participated have done business with the Government of Ontario in the last 15 months?
Premier.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I refer the honourable member to the aired report, which you quoted at the beginning of your remarks, and I'm sure you've read that very carefully, and you have the benefit of Mr. Aird's opinion on that particular matter. I think I can't take it any further than that.
New question. The member for order. Order. The member for Windsor Riverside, new question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question to the Minister of Health, and it is dealing with the latest tactic of the doctors to get around the ban on extra billing. And I'd like to read to the Minister two quotes from statements that have been sent by doctors to patients. One is from the Yorkview Medical Center, and I quote, "If you are experiencing financial difficulty, please feel free to discuss this situation with our business manager." And the other one is from Dr. James Popst, and one of the paragraphs says, except for those who have spoken to me and requested participation in this plan, the elderly, clergy, pensioners, and young adults will be excluded. Is the minister prepared to put a stop to this nonsense of the doctors, which are simply methods to line their pockets with more money and to break Bill 94?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think that it would be fair if the gentleman could share the statements in their entirety with me. He do have several problems with respect to the levies that have been issued with respect to what are called uninsured services by some, and I think that, Mr. Speaker, that I would be pleased to have those statements, and I will check into them at length and reply to him.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask the minister, since he expressed such an interest in this matter back in July, and then met with the College of Physicians and Surgeons, and is quoted in the newspapers as saying, and I quote, "Elston said later he expected the college would soon issue a pretty plain statement that there should be no charges deterring people from seeking doctors' care." Is the minister aware that as of 10 to 2 this afternoon, the College of Physicians and Surgeons has sent nothing to the doctors of this province stating what you promised they would in July? In fact, they haven't even met.
Mr. Speaker, I think from a formal standpoint that the honourable gentleman is right, although the message has been given, I think, through a number of areas that have expressed the concern not only of the college but of this minister. I can also tell you that in speaking with and talking to the president of the Ontario Medical Association and in reviewing correspondence that he himself has sent out to the medical profession, that the association likewise has expressed concerns about the particular charges, and in fact, I think that if we were able to review, and I do have a copy of a president's letter sent out, or it's dated October 7th, where it says that many members continue to charge patients directly and appropriately for uninsured services. However, the press is making us aware of a small number of members who are somewhat innovative in their definition of uninsured services and apparently exorbitant in their fees. And then he goes on to remind all members that the guidelines from OHIP and the College of Physicians and Surgeons are readily available. And I think that, Mr. Speaker, that the honourable gentleman will know that there is a cooperation between the minister and the college and the association itself to deal with this particular situation. I will remain and look forward to receiving his examples so that I can review them, and I remain quite concerned about the activity that he reports to us on.
New question. New question. The member for Leeds.
Mr. Speaker, my question is for the Minister of Natural Resources. On January 28th, I asked the Minister if he had any discussions with Mr. Fontaine, then the Minister of Northern Development and Mines, with regard to the Hearst Forest Management Agreement. He told this House he would take the question as notice and get back to us. I would like to know if he is prepared to answer that question now, nearly 8 months later.
Mr. Speaker, of course I would respond to the question. I could have responded to it at the time. I want to be absolutely sure of the record. There was not at any time any discussion with Mr. Fontaine about the FMA.
Order. Supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's rather mysterious in light of a memo that I have with me today, a memo to the Minister's Administrative Assistant dated December 18th, 1985, over a month before my question, The memo is with regard to specific information on United Sawmills, Hearst Forest Management, and Golden Tiger Explorations. The interesting point is that I never asked about Golden Tiger Explorations. The issue was never raised in the House until July of this year. And why was the Minister's office inquiring about Golden Tiger fully 7 months before my colleague, the member for Sarnia, made the connection to Rennie Fontaine in this House?
Mr. Speaker, my ministry or my people never asked that question. The question was raised by one of the people from one of the opposition parties with one of my people, and I said give them any information that they asked for. That's precisely what happened. That's precisely what happened.
Order. Order, I'll just wait. I'll just wait. Order. New question, the member for Nickel Belt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order.
My question is for the Minister of Municipal Affairs concerning his decision to appoint the Reeve of the community of Chapleau rather than allowing an election to occur, which is what the community wished to have happen. Could the Minister tell us why, despite the fact there was a unanimous resolution by Council to have an election to replace the Reeve, why the Minister decided to appoint a Reeve completely contrary to the wishes of the Council?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I would like to advise my Honourable Finn that the Council in Chapleau for a number of weeks, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 5 or 6 council meetings and private meetings, couldn't resolve the situation. Everybody wanted to run for the Reeves job, and it would have created 2 or 3 vacancies on council. So what I did, Mr. Speaker, was certainly act accordingly, according to the Municipal Act. Section 45 of the Municipal Act gives power to the minister to appoint, in that case, a Reeve, and that's exactly what I did.
Order. Supplementary.
Unfortunately, I know what you did. What I'm concerned about is the fact that you completely ignored the wishes of that council. Would you reconsider your decision and put on hold the appointment of Mr. Russell as Reeve until you've heard in person from a delegation from the community of Chapleau?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I will not reconsider. I will not reconsider. It is the privilege of the minister and the ministry to appoint councillors or Reeves. And this has happened, Mr. Speaker, in 135 municipalities since the last municipal election. Nobody has chosen to go the election way, and it is the privilege of the ministry and the minister, and I will not renege, Mr. Speaker. The council has a choice to appoint the councillor when this vacancy was created, but I will not retract, Mr. Speaker.
New question, the member for Ottawa West.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Community and Social Services. In view of the month-long strike by the Ottawa Carleton Children's Aid Society, and now the strike at the Robert Smart Centre for adolescents, and now also the likelihood of a strike at the Ottawa Association for the Mentally Retarded, it's obvious that the children's services in Ottawa Carleton are in a state of crisis, simply awaiting a disaster to happen. In view of the fact that the management in all of these agencies simply cannot meet even the very modest requests made by the workers due to inadequate funding from the ministry, how can the minister continue to justify his month-long stubborn stand to refuse in any way or shape or form to intervene in this very serious labor problem?
Mr. Speaker, there are 1,800 transfer payment agencies in this province. Would my honourable friend suggest that I negotiate with each one of those 1,800? And if he does not, where would he draw the line? Does my honourable friend also suggest that I go into the Ottawa Children's Aid Society or any other children's aid society in this province and start dictating to them line by line how they're going to operate their budget? I would think not. I have made it very clear that there are independent, autonomous boards across this province operating those agencies. They make those decisions on the basis of the transfer payment funds that they get from our ministry and from the municipality of Ottawa-Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, by way of supplementary, I would simply like to remind the minister that he is ultimately responsible for services to children in this province, and you can't duck that responsibility. Nobody has asked the minister to come in and to dictate.
Is that your supplementary?
We've simply asked you to come in and to sit down with the two sides and try to find some solution. And in view of the fact, Mr. Speaker, because of this tremendous crisis here, really, how long is the minister going to diddle and daddle around here? When are you going to come to Ottawa and try to bring the two sides together?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member has a background himself in the social service field, and he well knows that the responsibility of this ministry and this minister is to see to it that the mandated services are delivered and are delivered effectively. And we are doing that during the strike as well as outside of a strike. There is no crisis in this situation. And to the extent that every single child in that area is receiving the services that they require, that's being delivered. When they're not, this minister and ministry will step in.
100 children have been sent home from group cares.
Order.
That's not...
Order. That's a point of information. That's far from a point of order. The member for Lakeshore, new question.
Mr. Speaker, last week we had from the Canadian Public Health Association yet another report on the province's drinking water. And it noted on the one hand that there was a lack of information available on health effects of exposure to several compounds, but on the other hand reassured us that the health implications of overall exposure were considered to be negligible and below provincial guidelines. I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, you would understand that we can't have it both ways, but I'd like to ask the Minister to assure this House that he is satisfied that no problem exists with drinking water which originates in the Great Lakes.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that the member has asked this question because it allows me to deal with the report which provided some good news and I think some cautions as well. In the past, the manner of answering this question, of course, would be to simply say that all is fine because the report that comes out essentially says that the drinking water which is derived from the Great Lakes is fine. And the health authorities who were involved in this particular report indicated that was the case. But I do want to say to the member that we are always striving to improve the quality of water which is available to all of us, whether it's for drinking water purposes or recreational purposes. And that's why we have embarked upon an extremely ambitious program which has many facets to it, which deals with getting at the sources of the environmental problems that confront Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, and the other Great Lakes. Because the member would know that there are a large number of communities that derive their drinking water from these particular locations, and they want to be assured of that. Now, the report did, as I indicate, provide some good news, but I don't think we should ever be satisfied until such time as we have perhaps reached a state of pristine water, to go back to that state, because we have to keep striving at all times to improve it. The way we do that is to reduce and eventually eliminate the contaminants that are going into those waterways.
Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, I had anticipated the answer we're back to sources, but the Minister will know that many of the sources of contamination of the Great Lakes are beyond his control. They're on the U.S. side of the Niagara River, or they're boats in the lakes which he can't control their effluent from. The Minister must be aware that every state in the U.S. that borders the Great Lakes has legislated drinking water standards. Why will the minister not, in addition to controlling the sources, put in place in this province legislation that lays down standards for drinking water and that has a procedure by which the public can be notified when those standards are violated? Where's the drinking water strategy that the minister promised this House over a year ago, Mr. Speaker?
Minister.
Two or three things I would mention to the member in response to her very good question. And the first is, of course, she does recognize that we're talking about an international problem. And that's why on so many occasions we are in conversation and negotiation with our friends from the other side of the border. There's a gentleman here who will be introduced more appropriately later who is working very hard, for instance, to improve the environment in a transboundary sense. So we have that particular initiative underway. In addition to that, I would say to the member that she cannot forget that our federal government is involved and deeply interested in these matters, and she would know there was just a meeting of the Council of Resource and Environment Ministers that took place in the province of Alberta. And one of the topics that was discussed in a very thorough fashion, and where I think there was a pretty good consensus, was on the matter that she has brought to our attention. And so I would say that we have consistent across Canada concern about this matter, and that we will see, as a result of the consensus that has been reached at that meeting, a national program which all of us will be pleased with.
New question. The member for Essex South.
Also to the Minister of the Environment. Mr. Speaker, the state of Michigan has given approval for Detroit to build an enormous garbage incinerator without extra pollution controls, and despite clear warnings that this plant would increase the health risk in the Windsor and Essex County area. I want to know from the Minister what he is doing to ensure that Ontario residents, especially in the Windsor and Essex County area, are going to be protected from this potential source of air pollution.
Minister.
The member may be aware that this matter has been before authorities in both the United States and Canada for some period of time. Initially, when we received word that this was the circumstance that we were facing, in other words, the construction of a garbage incinerator, which in fact did not have attached to it the best available technology, but rather simply some technology that some people felt was adequate. As a result, there were direct representations made by me to both the Governor's Office and the Department of Natural Resources in the state of Michigan. In addition to that, there was the invoking of the Memorandum of Understanding, whereby the state of Michigan and the province of Ontario may have placed on its agenda, this joint organization that we have, matters of this kind. And I can assure the member that that will be placed on the agenda once again. I can assure him as well that I have had discussions with the Federal Minister of the Environment, the Honourable Tom McMillan, who has been making representations both through the External Affairs Department and his colleague Joe Clark, and under his own auspices through the Environmental Protection Agency in the United States. So in addition to this, the Premier of the province has directed a letter to the Governor of the state of Michigan outlining Ontario's opposition and expressing the desire to see the best available and latest available technology placed on this incinerator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Supplementary question to the Minister of the Environment. I understand, and to my disappointment, that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has ended its legal efforts to revoke Detroit's permit for the construction of this incinerator. Without the U.S. EPA legal action, what steps and what legal steps will the minister take to ensure that the pollution controls will be put on this incinerator, and will the minister try to make contact with other political officials in the state of Michigan who feel the way we do that this incinerator is in fact an environmental hazard?
Minister.
Well, the answer to the question as it relates to the Environmental Protection Agency intervention in the courts is, of course, that it was most disappointing that the EPA had to withdraw its particular suit. It did so. The suit, of course, was against the City of Detroit and the Combustion Engineering Company. They withdrew the suit because they felt that they did not have a strong position in court. Ontario had already announced that it was going to participate in this particular suit with a view to having the best available technology placed on that incinerator. However, since the EPA has withdrawn and is looking for other avenues of action, we must then intervene in another way in the court system. And at the present time, in consultation with lawyers, even on the other side of the border, who have been somewhat successful in cases in the past, we are attempting to develop the best possible method of intervening in the U.S. courts on this matter to ensure that best available technology is placed on that incinerator. And in addition to this, we'll continue our political initiatives with our friends in the state of Michigan.
New question. The member for Durham York.
I have a question for the Minister of Agriculture.
Jack.
You have raised the expectations of farmers in Ontario regarding financial assistance relating to the current weather crises. When can we expect an announcement of new programs to assist our hard-pressed farmers?
Well, Mr. Speaker, that comment is completely erroneous. This minister traveled very extensively throughout this province to look at the damage that has been done to this point. And at every occasion that I had to speak to the farmers or to speak to the news media, I made it abundantly clear that until there was a total assessment done of the crops which underwent some kind of damage because of not only inclement weather conditions, but because of price, and I think you're well aware of what the corn producers and the soybean producers might expect by way of price because of the Food Security Act, I told them that there was no additional aid for the farmers at this time and that there wouldn't be until I was able to get a complete assessment of how much damage had been done. And at that time, we'll see just what can be done in conjunction with the federal government's $1 billion deficiency payment, if you call it that, which your leader was going around the country saying that the federal government, because of its debt, couldn't come up with any money. I sent a telex off to the federal government. We get $1 billion.
Order. Supplementary.
You don't know what
Well,
you're talking
I'm not sure what that all meant, Mr. Speaker. For a guy that
Order. Would the honourable member take his seat? Order. I'll just wait. I hope you don't run out all the time so some other members can ask questions. Final supplementary?
Well, it's difficult to ask a supplementary from that answer, Mr. Speaker. For a guy that doesn't know what to put on rubber boots.
Order. Did you want to try?
No, I'll try. Yes, I certainly will try. If the minister checks the records, he will find that the rainfall since mid-August breaks records in parts of this province going back to the 1840s. Those are very unique situations. They certainly require some unique and imaginative actions. Now, when are you going to quit polishing your image and actually do something for the farmers in Ontario relating to the weather crisis that they are facing right now in this province?
Well, it's interesting, Mr. Speaker, that the member should refer to the fact that I didn't have rubber boots when I went out to ascertain the damage that had been done. At least I went out. I don't think that member got outside of his writing to take a look at any part of the province where there was any kind of damage done. So that shows you who has the farmer's interest at heart. Now,
Order. Would the honourable member take his seat? Order. Are all members finished now? No? Well, I'll just wait a little longer. Response, Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the member didn't provide any great news when he told me we've been having record rainfalls. I was well aware of that. And And some considerable weeks ago, when we were able to ascertain that some of these crops were subject to considerable damage because they couldn't get them harvested, I set up a working committee within my ministry which has been monitoring the situation. They will continue to monitor the situation. We are looking at existing programs, and if the member wants to be constructive, he can remind the farmers of the programs that we already have in existence that they can make use of. The offer program, the crop stabilization program, the tripartite stabilization program, the crop insurance program. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, as I travel around the province, I have many farmers telling me that this government has done more in 15 months than you people did in 10 years.
Order. Order. New question, the member for Algoma. A short one, I hope.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question to the Minister of Transportation and Communications. Is the Minister and is the provincial government aware that the Algoma Steel Corporation has given the Algoma Central Railway a very short time period in which to respond to its request for a decrease in the freight rate for Sinter from the Algoma Ore Division in Wawa to Sault Ste. Marie? And could he report to the House on the discussions that the provincial government and the federal government have been involved in with these two companies to determine what can be done to preserve the jobs on the ACR and to protect the tourism and accommodation jobs in Sault Ste. Marie? Is this government considering an ONTC takeover of the ACR?
Order. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have not at my fingertips all of the information the honourable member requests. I have discussed to some extent with the federal Minister of Transport the provision and ongoing service to remote areas in particular and areas of Ontario in general as recently as a week and a half ago. I don't have the specific details as it relates to Algoma, but I'm sure the member is very much aware of our ongoing interest in serving Northern Ontario in every mode of transportation available and maintaining that kind of service to remote and otherwise economically in need areas, and he certainly has my assurance that that kind of effort will continue. I will attempt to get the details of the question as soon as possible.
The members, I know, are sorry to learn that that's the extent of the allotted time for question period.